The waves crashed, the sun blazed, and the scent of salt hung thick in the air. It was the summer of 1965, and Surfrider Beach in Malibu was alive with the rhythm of surfboards slicing through the Pacific. On the sand, a crowd gathered, eyes fixed on a lone figure riding the crest of a perfect wave. This was Miki Dora, the enigmatic king of Malibu, whose style and charisma embodied the rebellious spirit of the era. But this wasn't just about surfing. It was a cultural revolution, unfolding along California's coastline. From the bohemian cliffs of Big Sur to the electric boardwalks of Venice Beach, the 1960s turned these shores into more than just places to swim. They became symbols of freedom, rebellion, and counterculture. In this video, we're taking you back to that decade, not with nostalgia, but with a lens sharp enough to feel the sunburn and hear the rock and roll. 5 beaches, 5 stories, 1 unforgettable era. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Pacific, casting a golden hue on the sands of Pismo Beach. It was the early morning of a summer day in the mid-1960s, and the beach was already alive with activity. Clam diggers, armed with buckets and shovels, scoured the shoreline in search of the prized Pismo clams that gave the town its nickname, the clam capital of the world, while just beyond the breakers, surfers paddled out, eager to catch the morning swells that were gaining popularity as surf culture swept across California. Towering above it all stood the Pismo Pier, a central landmark since its construction in 1924, offering locals and tourists a perfect view of both fishermen working below and the thrill-seekers riding waves beyond. Classic cars cruised lazily down the adjacent streets, their windows down, surf rock echoing from the radios, blending seamlessly with the ocean breeze and salty air. And just a short walk away, family-run joints like Pismo Fish and Chips, which began welcoming customers in the early 1960s, served up fresh seafood to barefoot beachgoers and sunburnt teenagers alike. Inland from the coast, motor lodges and roadside diners dotted the route along Highway 1, welcoming travelers who were discovering Pismo as a quieter, more affordable alternative to the bigger beach cities. These roadside stops became part of the classic California road trip experience, a mix of neon signs, hand-painted menus, and the promise of saltwater just minutes away. Tourists would check in, unload their station wagons, and head straight to the sand, building a connection with the beach that would bring them back summer after summer. As the 60s unfolded, Pismo Beach remained a pocket of calm amid the cultural storms of the decade. While places like Venice and San Francisco were erupting with protest and radical change, Pismo held onto a sense of nostalgic Americana, with its small-town charm, bonfire gatherings, and evening strolls along the pier. It was a place where the past lingered just long enough to feel timeless, even as the tide of change lapped gently at its shores. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Surfrider Beach as a line of surfers waited patiently, eyes fixed on the incoming sets. In the early 1960s, Malibu had already cemented its reputation as the epicenter of California surf culture, drawing wave riders from across the coast to its legendary right-hand break at First Point. The waves here offered long, graceful rides, perfect for the rising popularity of longboard surfing, which was rapidly becoming the defining style of the era. Among the crowd stood Miki Dora, known by locals and surfers alike as Da Cat. His presence was magnetic. With unmatched style and a rebellious attitude, Dora wasn't just a surfer. He was an icon, a symbol of freedom in a time of growing commercialization. His elegant moves on the board and defiant stance against surf conformity turned him into both a legend and a lightning rod in the evolving surf scene. Overlooking all of this was the Malibu Pier, originally constructed in 1905, now a beloved gathering spot for surfers, spectators, and photographers capturing the golden light bouncing off the waves. The pier anchored a beach that had become far more than a destination. It was a lifestyle. Just beyond the waterline, the Malibu hills echoed with the quiet affluence that defined the area. Celebrities, writers, and musicians began settling into beachside homes tucked between canyons and cliffs, bringing with them an undercurrent of glamour that mingled with the laid-back rhythm of surf life. Malibu in the 60s wasn't just counterculture. It was counterculture dressed in denim and designer sunglasses, a blend of rebellion and refinement that made it feel both raw and aspirational. As the decade wore on, Malibu began to represent a broader cultural fantasy. It appeared in films, in album covers, in the lyrics of surf anthems playing from transistor radios along the beach. Teenagers across America dreamed of a life that felt like Malibu. Sun-bleached, saltwater-drenched, and perfectly unbothered. And for those lucky enough to be there, the line between myth and reality was often just the distance between the shore and the next perfect wave. The afternoon sun shimmered over the Pacific as crowds poured onto the warm sands of Santa Monica. In the mid-1960s, the beach pulsed with energy, a vibrant blend of sunbathers, surfers, artists, and families all chasing the Southern California dream. Towering above it all stood the Santa Monica Pier, with its famous archway, the whirring carousel, and the smell of popcorn drifting through the ocean breeze, creating a scene that felt pulled from a postcard. Just steps away, the La Monica Ballroom, once the largest dance hall on the West Coast, had only recently closed its doors in 1962, marking the end of a glittering era of swing, jazz, and big band nights. But the spirit of celebration hadn't left. The beach remained a stage for cultural convergence and youthful rebellion. To the south, the waves rolled in beside Bay Street Beach, long known to many as the Inkwell, a historic gathering place for African American beachgoers during segregation. Even as legal barriers began to fall, its legacy lived on as a symbol of both resilience and transformation. Off the sand, Santa Monica was evolving rapidly. The city was in the midst of urban renewal, and new public spaces and modern buildings reshaped the skyline. At its cultural heart stood the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, a sleek, modern venue that hosted everything from rock concerts to award shows, becoming a beacon for creativity and progress. In the 1960s, Santa Monica was more than just a beach. It was a mirror of the decade's pulse, a place where tradition met change, where history was being written in bikinis and board shorts, jazz clubs, and civil rights marches, all under the same golden sun. If you could spend just one day on the sands of Santa Monica in the 1960s, what would you do first? Hit the waves, ride the pier, or dance beneath the lights of the ballroom? Let us know in the comments. In the mid-1960s, Venice Beach was a paradox drenched in sunshine. Part carnival, part revolution. Once nicknamed the slum by the sea, it had evolved into a sanctuary for bohemians, poets, activists, and artists searching for something real in a rapidly changing world. The Venice canals, inspired by their Italian counterpart, were lined with small, aging homes now filled with dreamers and dissenters, where nightly gatherings blurred the line between protest and performance. The oceanfront walk was its main artery, buzzing with barefoot musicians strumming protest songs, painters spilling color onto canvases and sidewalks, and bodybuilders flexing under the open sky at Muscle Beach, which had found its new home in Venice since the early 1950s. Every corner pulsed with raw energy, from the smoke of incense trailing from street vendors to the rhythmic clatter of skaters carving their lines around the Venice Pavilion, where graffiti was not vandalism, but public poetry. Away from the noise and spectacle, Venice's dive bars and coffee houses became unofficial forums for debate, creativity, and resistance. Inside dimly lit rooms filled with secondhand furniture and the hum of reel-to-reel tape recorders, young writers read anti-war poetry and discussed civil rights, while painters exhibited their work on makeshift walls in defiance of galleries that would never let them in. These spaces weren't glamorous, but they were alive, breeding grounds for ideas that would ripple far beyond the beach. And yet, not everyone came to Venice to rebel. Some came simply to belong. Veterans, immigrants, and working-class families made up the quieter side of the neighborhood, raising children in small apartments just blocks from the waves. Their stories, less photographed, less romanticized, were equally part of Venice's truth. In the 1960s, Venice Beach wasn't just a place you visited. It was a place you survived, created, and became. In the mid-1960s, Big Sur was more than a place on the map. It was a sanctuary between land and sea, where towering redwoods brushed against fog-draped cliffs, and the Pacific Ocean roared below like a living force. The winding path of Highway 1, officially named California's first scenic highway in 1965, offered not just breathtaking views, but a sense of freedom, as if the road itself were leading to something deeper, something unspoken. At the heart of this mystique was the Esalen Institute, founded in 1962 on a bluff above the ocean. What began as an experimental retreat center quickly became a magnet for philosophers, psychologists, mystics, and musicians, all drawn to the promise of expanding consciousness beyond the boundaries of convention. Surrounded by raw nature, participants engaged in workshops on meditation, sensory awareness, and Eastern thought, as the crashing waves below mirrored the inner turbulence and peace they sought to understand. Not far from Esalen, music took root in its own quiet revolution. The Big Sur Folk Festival, launched in 1964, created intimate gatherings where artists like Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young performed not for cameras or fame, but for the communion between song, setting, and soul. The festival reflected the essence of Big Sur, unfiltered, honest, and deeply human. For writers, this stretch of coast was both a refuge and a muse. Henry Miller, who had lived in Big Sur since the 1940s, wrote about it as a place where art and nature converged. Jack Kerouac, too, sought clarity here, capturing his emotional descent and longing for peace in his novel Big Sur. Their words helped immortalize the region, cementing its place in the countercultural imagination. In the 1960s, Big Sur stood apart. It was a landscape where the boundaries between self and world dissolved, where seeking mattered more than arriving, and where the spirit of the era found one of its purest reflections. It wasn't just a destination, it was a way of thinking, a way of being, a way of breaking away. From the clam-strewn shores of Pismo Beach to the misty cliffs of Big Sur, the beaches of California in the 1960s were more than scenic getaways. They were stages where a generation redefined itself. Each coast held its own rhythm, its own voice, its own moment in the sun. Whether through the rebellion of surfers in Malibu, the poetic unrest of Venice, or the countercultural awakening that echoed through Santa Monica, these places captured a decade's desire to live freely, love loudly, and feel something real. Looking back now, it's clear. The 60s weren't just lived in California. They were carved into its coastline. These beaches didn't just witness history, they were history. Which of these iconic beaches would you visit if you could step into the past? And what do you think it would feel like to stand there, in that moment, with the world changing all around you? Tell us in the comments. If this video made you feel something, if it sparked a memory or a dream, hit like and leave a comment. That simple gesture tells YouTube this video matters, and helps it reach more people who still believe the past has something powerful to say. Thanks for watching, and remember, some waves never stop echoing.